Welcome back to another edition of the Magic Latest Podcast, the podcast where we discuss everything Orlando Magic basketball. I'm your host, Jalon Dixon, and today we got a couple of things to get into coming off the Magic's loss once again to the Cleveland Cavaliers. But before we get into that, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that post notification bell so you always know when we're dropping new videos. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers and trying to become one of the biggest Orlando Magic podcasts here on the YouTube platform. And shout out to Underdog Fantasy as usual for sponsoring the pod. Use the QR code here in the right-hand corner or the link in the description to get $75 in bonus entries when you place your first $5 entry. Again, shout out to Underdog Fantasy for that, and we'll talk about them a little bit later on in the episode. Let's go ahead and get right into it because there ain't too much analysis for this game. We just played this game a couple of days ago. This didn't shake out any differently than last time. Final score for this game, 114-98 in favor of the Cleveland Cavaliers. If y'all thought I was joking, check this out. The score for the game, the prior, Cleveland Cavaliers won 119-105. So, not that big of a difference as far as the success rate is concerned. Donovan Mitchell, 45 points in this game. Had 36 last time. 45, 4, 4, 15 of 25 from the field. He was 15 of 30 last game. 10 of 12 from the free throw line. So got to the free throw line 7 more times than he did in the first win, and he got the 3-ball rolling in a way he didn't in the first game. 2 of 8 last time, 5 of 8 in this game. Biggest difference in this game for the Cleveland Cavaliers was that if you thought Donovan Mitchell was balling last game, this one he kicked it up to a completely different notch. Other contributors in the game for the Cleveland Cavaliers, Evan Mobley, 20 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 9 of 16 from the field, 2 blocks, was a positive 5 on the floor. And the only other player I would say really did anything of note from an offensive standpoint had to be Jalon Dixon, 14 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 5 of 10 from the field, 2 of 3 from beyond the arc. Let's talk about the Magic, though. Paolo Banchero, 37, 10, 4, 13 of 21 from the field, 9 of 13 from the free throw line, 2 of 5 from beyond the arc. Took care of the ball pretty decent. Still ended up being a minus 14 on the floor. That's because they were getting their tails whipped most of this game. Desmond Bane, 19, 4, no assists, 7 of 17 from the field. Excuse me. 3 of 7 from beyond the arc. 1 steal, 1 block. And Anthony Black, 14 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 6 of 14 from the field, 2 of 9 from beyond the arc. 2 of 9. We're going to talk about the three-point shooting exclusively in a moment. But there's 2 things I want to point out in relation to the way this game played out. 2. Number 1 is the inefficiency of the starting lineup from a scoring perspective. That's number 1. Again, I'll read through the shooting splits from the floor. 13 of 21 from Paolo Banchero, 7 of 17 from Desmond Bane, 4 of 8 from Wendell Carter Jr., 2 of 13 from Jalen Suggs, and 6 of 14. Everyone except for Jalen Suggs played more than 30 minutes. The bench consists of 18 minutes from Tyus Jones, 14 minutes from Noah Pendo, 12 minutes from Mo Wagner, 9 minutes from Tristan da Silva, 4 minutes from Jonathan Isaac, 4 minutes from Jace Richardson. If that's not a signal that you're running out of things to do as the coach, I don't know what is. That's like when you're playing 2K and you know that you're close to losing the series, so you drop your rotation down to starters only because you know that you need to have the most talented players on the floor in order to get a win. That's what this is. Why is Tyus Jones playing more minutes than Jace Richardson at this juncture? Goga Bataz, they didn't play. It says DNP coach's decision. If there was some kind of other injury that was placed, I didn't see a report for it. I'd have to double check that in case I missed something. But why would Goga Bataz play and Jonathan Isaac? Why would Goga Bataz not play and Jonathan Isaac does, even if it was for only 4 minutes? What's happened to Tristan da Silva? Has Jamal Mosley decided that Tristan da Silva is not a good enough player to play? Has Tristan da Silva is something wrong? To only play 9 minutes. For Tristan da Silva to play less minutes than Tyus Jones is surprising to me. Let's talk about the 3-point shooting, man. Let's talk about the 3-point shooting because I don't want to dwell on this game too specific because again it's a rerun of the game we just watched a few days ago. I found a stat earlier, and I'm gonna read out the entire sentence, but there's a particular portion of it that matters the most. Orlando got off to a strong start and had a 10-point lead after the first quarter, but then as Mitchell started heating up, the Magic went cold and ended up making only 11 of their 39 3-point attempts for 28%. It was the 16th time this season they shot under 30% from downtown. I want y'all to understand how insane that actually sounds. The Orlando Magic have played in 45 games this season. 45 games. If 16 of their 45 games they've shot 30% or less from beyond the arc, that means nearly 40% of the games this year, they have been arguably the most inefficient 3-point shooting team in the NBA. That is atrocious. That is atrocious. When we talk about what it is that this team needs to do in order to improve, to make a push, right? They need floor spacing very bad. They need an energy pick-me-up really, really bad. But there also needs to be a philosophical change as to how to go about getting 3-point looks. Right? Because we talk about on this podcast all the time how difficult the Orlando Magic offense just looks on a night-to-night basis, right? That also comes from the fact that everything they get from a 3-point shooting standpoint feels like it comes out of the chaos of transition or strictly out of drive and kick scenarios, and never anything that feels like a really drawn up, this is how we're going to spring a guy loose to get him the ball free in space in rhythm to get a couple of jumpers from beyond the arc off. This team, I think, doesn't know how to put together efficient 3-point shooting opportunities because they play the game so clunky that I don't know if this team really knows what a true, fair, wide-open look looks like. Not the defense chose to uncontest because they don't trust your 3-ball the way we've seen. We talked about those stats earlier on in the season about how teams let this team shoot the 3-ball wide open because they don't trust the percentage. Because they trust the percentages that say that Orlando's a bad 3-point shooting team. But I'm talking about creating advantages for wide open looks that create and instill a certain level of confidence. Being left wide open actually makes you more likely to miss because you're no longer confident in your shot because the opposing defense doesn't believe you have a 3-ball. But being able to draw up easy opportunities, particularly for Desmond Bane. And this is something that really gets under my skin because I think I've mentioned it so many times throughout the podcast since starting, but the concept of Desmond Bane, the theoretical version of Desmond Bane that this team traded for was 37 to 38%, nearly 20 points per game, the ability to facilitate, create mismatch opportunities in the form of being able to attack the big man off the dribble, right? He can attack a big man in space where he can take him off the dribble and put him in a position where he can either draw contact off a foul or, of course, he can just get to the basket by blowing by with speed, right? I feel like Desmond Bane has done everything the Orlando Magic expected out of him except shoot the three ball at an efficient enough clip. I think that's literally it. If we're going to grade the Desmond Bane trade not off of team success and off of what he has actually contributed to this team based off of what his statistics say, what the film tells you about what his skill set translates to, and then some of the feats that he's pulled off throughout this season, like some of the game winners. Outside of the fact that he has not been a 37% three-point shooter, outside of the fact that he is not taking 8, 9, 10 three-point attempts per game like he mentioned he wanted to do coming into the season, outside of that, he's done everything else. The issue is that the thing he's not doing is the one thing the Magic brought him in most for. It's the three ball. And again, I really wonder, right? We had this conversation when we were talking about the idea of trading for Karl-Anthony Towns an episode or two ago of, does it matter, right? Does grabbing a floor spacer matter if you're unable to get him consistent looks from beyond the arc that maximize that skill set at a high enough level? Right, we can get Karl-Anthony Towns, might be one of the most efficient three-point shooters at the big man position we've seen in NBA history. But if he comes to the Orlando Magic and he doesn't have the floor spacing chops that he's had for the New York Knicks or for the Minnesota Timberwolves, is he an effective player for us? Because from a rim protection standpoint, questionable. He's one of the most foul-prone bigs in the league next to probably Jaren Jackson Jr. And he's not half the rim protector that Jaren Jackson Jr. is when he's on. Right? And Desmond Bane, I think for everything that he brings to the table, his inability to knock the three ball down at a high enough clip right now is the one thing that I think is really, if I had to pick one thing that would make me question the Desmond Bane trade, besides obviously the amount of draft capital that was moved, given the fact that Trae Young just got traded for what he got traded for, it would just be that the three ball is not translating. But again, it takes one occurrence to make you wonder, two occurrences to make you think there's a trend forming, and three to see that there's something going on. Right? And KCP was our first test subject. Right? He was our first real test subject of this. Career 38% three-point shooter comes to Orlando and shoots 34% from beyond the arc in his time with the Magic. Desmond Bane and Tyus Jones are both career 37 or better three-point shooters from beyond the arc. Both are shooting 35% or less from beyond the arc so far this season. 1, 2, 3. So now the question is, whose fault is that? Who do you blame? For all of those that are on the Jamal Mosley needs to be fired hype train, this is one of those trends I've been trying to keep tabs on, because this is what's going to lead. This is going to be part of the story of what gets Jamal Mosley moved out. Are the players tapped in with him? Seems like it's getting a little difficult. Is the defense still the calling card it was that's been able to get you through the last 4 years? It's not. It has not been. Is the offense improving in any manner that makes you feel like they're finally not going to be a bottom 10 offense in the NBA? So far, it's not looking so good. They're 18th right now, I believe, actually. So they're teetering on nearly bottom 10. Has the three ball improved in any manner? For all of those that are pro Jamal Mosley being fired, these are the different data points that are going to be brought to the table when the idea of moving off of him comes up. And rightfully so. He is in a very precarious situation right now because this team is trending downward and trending downward fast. I opened up the standings this morning. You guys remember when I asked you last podcast, check out that episode if you haven't already. I said, what's your panic meter on this team's ability to make the postseason this year? 1 being zero panic. There's no worry. This team's definitely going to make the playoffs. 10 being, oh crap, we ain't looking so hot. This could be a bad spot for us. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Orlando Magic, excuse me, the Orlando Magic are 23-22. Currently on a 4-game losing streak, the worst losing streak only behind the Brooklyn Nets and the Washington Wizards in the Eastern Conference right now. They are eighth in the Eastern Conference standings, which would put them smack dab in the middle of the play-in tournament. And they are only 1.5 games back of being behind the Chicago Bulls, who are 23-23, and the Atlanta Hawks, who are 23-25, but trending upward as they've won their last 3 games. So all of that to say that if the Bulls win 1 game and the Hawks continue in their direction with 1 or 2 more games, and Orlando continues in their direction trending downward, by the end of this week, the Orlando Magic could be the 10th seed in the Eastern Conference. Now, do they have enough of a cushion to protect themselves from teams like the Milwaukee Bucks and Charlotte Hornets, who are 18-26 being the Bucks and 19-28 for the Charlotte Hornets respectively? Do they have enough cushion against those teams? Well, the Milwaukee Bucks sound like they want to try to make a move at the trade deadline. They are going to be without Giannis Antetokounmpo for an indefinite amount of time. At least that's what it sounds like. That could be jargon for saying he's going to get traded and we just don't want anything else to happen to him between now and the trade deadline. That could also just be, look, we're trying to get through the trade deadline without any more hoopla. We'll sit you down with whatever injury it is that you're dealing with while we continue to try to work on getting you some help from when you come back. Charlotte Hornets are trending in the right direction with 3 straight wins, and Colin Knippel was just named as one of the rising stars for the rookie class, which was a given because he's like number 1 or number 2 in the Rookie of the Year race right now, but still. I'm saying all of this to say the Orlando Magic are in the play-in tournament right now, as the standings currently sit. If things do not change on February 5th, there is a chance that this team is staring at the 10 spot by the end of February. Truthfully, that's the scenario that this team is staring at right now. This team has to make a change. This team has to make a change on February 5th. The trade deadline could be the decision where they decide to move off of Jamal Mosley if they want it to be. But February 5th is an inflection point for NBA teams as far as their viewpoint on their roster, who they do and do not believe in, what they do believe is going to translate moving forward as far as whatever their given team philosophy at the time is, whether that's a tanking team trying to sell off high commodity assets, whether that's a playoff team trying to buy productive players that could add to their cause. There's also the idea of making a move that finds stability within chaos. Is that firing the coach? Is that making a blockbuster trade? Is it a combination of the two? All I know is that this Orlando Magic team needs to make a change, and it needs to happen quickly. Because at this point, the season's falling apart in front of them. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second, though. But before we get into that, fast breaks, buzzer beaters, and block parties are back, and Underdog is the best place to get in all the action. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like points, rebounds, steals, and more. Get your picks right, and you can win up to 5,000 times your cash. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to lock in on Pelicans against the Oklahoma City Thunder and LA Clippers against the Utah Jazz. Going for Zion Williamson lower than 31.5 points, rebounds, assists, expecting the Oklahoma City Thunder defense to clamp Zion Williamson up. I think that he'll have a decent scoring night, but as far as rebounds and assists are concerned, I think he's going to get put in a box. I think the Oklahoma City Thunder are going to protect the glass. I think the Oklahoma City Thunder are not going to allow him to be a big-time facilitator. He's going to have to do all the dirty work on his own, and I think he's going to finish with like 24 points. And I think the rebounds and assists are not going to be enough to outbalance that to put him over the top. That's what? If we put him at 24, 3, and 3, that leaves him at 30. It's not a confident lower, but it's a lower nonetheless. Then we got James Harden with the Clippers against the Utah Jazz, higher than 39.5 points, rebounds, and assists. It's the Utah Jazz, man. It's the Utah Jazz. It's James Harden. It's one of those games where he gets to absolutely ball out. I think it would be a really good opportunity for him to be able to help this LA Clippers team continue trending in the right direction. So, again, that's lower than 31.5 points, rebounds, and assists for Zion Williamson against the Thunder. Higher than 39.5 points, rebounds, and assists for James Harden against the Utah Jazz. Download the app today and use promo code BASKETBALLFAN to score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. Again, that's promo code BASKETBALLFAN. Underdog, make picks, win money.
Must be 18 plus. 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska. 19 plus in Colorado for some games. 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia. And present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/play and get terms DFSTML for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 helpline at 1-878 or text HOMI 467-369.
Let's talk about something that I thought was really interesting to me. And this is not going to be necessarily a long subject, right? Because it's more of just like me thinking out loud and more of something I want to gauge the comment section on. And I think I spoke on this a little bit last episode, but I want to take my time and really process this one today. Franz Wagner came back in time for the game against the Memphis Grizzlies in Berlin. He also plays the game in London. I believe he plays about 28 minutes in both games. He comes back off 4 days rest, comes up as a late scratch with left ankle soreness against the Charlotte Hornets. Ends up being a scratch for ankle soreness against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Not only the first time, but also in this second matchup. The Orlando Magic go on the road again to face crosstown rival Miami Heat tomorrow on Wednesday, as of when this was recorded. And I got to thinking, he came back just in time for the Berlin game, something that we knew was an important feat for him, Mo, Tristan, the whole shebang, right? He comes back, and after playing 2 games, has missed the last 3 with the chance of missing a 4th. And maybe not even playing in either of the last 2 games for to close out the month of January. We do need to ask the question about whether or not Franz Wagner rushed back too early, right? Because it's gonna cost us the season if this is the truth. I think we all know it too. If Franz Wagner rushed back from injury, all to play in Berlin, and I get it, I understand the moralistic standpoint of it. But Franz Wagner may cost the second half of the season for the Orlando Magic off of a choice built strictly out of emotion. And from a coaching staff and a medical staff perspective, it feels like they also didn't do a great job of protecting the player from the player. Because you cannot tell me that it is a coincidence that when the Orlando Magic play in Berlin overseas in the 2 international games against the Memphis Grizzlies, that Franz can play nearly 30 minutes a game and then come back off of multiple days rest. Mind you, there was 4 days rest going into that game against against Memphis in Berlin. 4 days equivalent rest to come back home in Orlando against the Charlotte Hornets, and he's a late scratch. That to me signals that he wasn't ready. The fact that he's missed 2 games beyond that signals to me that he wasn't ready. The fact that there's a chance that he may not play for the rest of January, which would be 5 straight games, signals that to me. If the 2 games against the Memphis Grizzlies were a home and home split between Orlando and playing in Memphis, would Franz have played? These are the things that I wonder about when it comes to a decision like that one. These are the things that I think about because they're going to have long-term ramifications on the season. The injury management aspect of this team from the very beginning of the year has always been to play things safe, which is why Franz sat for a month when the timetable had him at 2 to 4 weeks. Paolo Banchero was supposed to be a day-to-day watch for his groin injury that made it seem like he was going to come back within maybe 2 to 3 games. He missed nearly 7. Right? Like, Jalen Suggs, it feels like they've been treating him with kid gloves from an injury perspective all season long. And rightfully so, might I add. This team has played the cautious game with injuries all season long. And we see the impact that it's had. But also, blatantly letting a guy go out and play 30 minutes in back-to-back games only for him to come up short the next 3, potentially 5 games as far as his availability is concerned, tells me that he was ramped up way too quickly. So, in my personal opinion, I think he rushed back. I think he rushed back, and I think it's going to cost him a lot more of the season than whatever the initial diagnosis was supposed to symbolize. I think this is going to be one of those decisions that when we look at a couple of inflection points for this season and we say, what went wrong for the Orlando Magic? Well, we'll say, Jamal Mosley can't coach offense. The team lost faith in Jamal Mosley to the point of not wanting to guard defensively to the same level they're capable of. Franz Wagner rushed back to the floor too soon, and now all of a sudden he's a guy who only plays 30 games this year, 35 games this year. Like, these are the things that we're going to talk about. So, you guys let me know in the comment section down below. I'm not willing to let anyone talk me off the idea of Franz rushing back because there's just too much evidence that says that that's what happened, was that he rushed back beyond whatever the timetable was that would fit him best. It doesn't matter if a month was the set timetable. If he needed more time, then he needed more time. But what are your thoughts on the idea of Franz rushing back? Like, what is your feelings? What are your emotions? What are your reactions to the idea of Franz Wagner rushing back to play that game against the Memphis Grizzlies in Berlin, to play that game against the Memphis Grizzlies in London, just to end up back on the shelf and potentially back on the shelf for a next handful of games? Because I think it's going to have a great impact from a negative perspective, a significant impact, I'll say, on the Orlando Magic this season. Because I see a world where he struggles with this for a good for a good majority of the year. And for context, and I want to make sure that I've got this all the way correct. For context, Franz has played 26 games this year. And we're already nearly at 50 games on the season. I believe that Franz Wagner is going to finish the season with 40 games played because of this decision. I believe that Franz Wagner is going to finish this season with 40 games played, no more than 45, because of this decision. For context, for those who, mathematically speaking, there are 36 games left. There are 36 games left for the Orlando Magic. That means that the prediction is that I believe he will play no more than 14 to 20 of those 35 games left, or 36 games left. That's about half, give or take. And I think that's all going to be based due to this decision. And I think that is also going to put them in a situation where they might just mess around and miss the playoffs. Because you have to remember, just because you make the play-in doesn't mean you're in. Even if you make the play-in as a 7 or 8, it doesn't mean you're locked into the playoffs. There's 1, potentially 2 elimination games depending on where you finish in the standings. If the Orlando Magic go into a play-in tournament without Franz Wagner, do the Magic come out of it? These are the things we have to think about. Last but not least, let's go ahead and react to the comments from the comment section of last podcast episode. Again, thank you guys so much for all the comments, respect, love, all of that under the sun. It's been very helpful as far as me getting real feedback from the community, as well as learning more and more about where we all are on the Orlando Magic so far this season. Let's start at the bottom and work our way up. User DG6 says, if you stopped all the ridiculous clickbaiting and ultra sensationalistic speculating, the channel would grow. Okay, let's do 2 things. Number 1, I want to make it very clear, I do not make my own thumbnails. I do not make my own titles. And I'm not saying that in a disrespectful manner. I appreciate my management team so much for what they're able to do and how they're able to help push out my content. But at the end of the day, when it comes to things like the titles and it comes to things like the thumbnails, there's a set structure that we have for the company that I work under, and they are a part of the process in terms of helping churn out this content on a daily basis for y'all. Part of being able to put out daily content is having a system and having a structure that allows us to rinse and repeat things that give the channel, cohesion. The thumbnails look all the same. The title structure is very similar to one another as far as trying to create a certain type of a headline, storyline, so on and so forth. That's YouTube 101, right? Is there a better way to go about doing it? Sure, I'm sure there are certain things that take place. Are there certain thumbnails and titles and things like that maybe could be reworded and things of that nature? Of course, I've mentioned it on a handful of occasions that there's always things that can be done to help in terms of improving the channel. The channel has also been going really, really strong, where there's a lot of YouTubers who struggle to see their first 100 subscribers within their first year of recording. I know, as somebody who's tried to do YouTube on the side before, that getting your first 100 subscribers can be very, very hard. You guys have become a very strong and loyal fan base for me in a very quick amount of time. In less than a year, I'm already near 1,000 subscribers. I'm hoping that by the time I hit a year, I've already hit 1,000 subscribers on here, and we've built a strong community of Orlando Magic fans and NBA fans in general, because NBA fans are welcome as well. I do not just talk about the Orlando Magic strictly on this podcast, because I try my best to loop in the impacts of different news around the league in order to talk about it from an Orlando Magic lens. But you don't have to be an Orlando Magic fan to be a fan of the Orlando Magic latest, right? So Those are two things. No disrespect to this person, by the way. Totally understandable, of course. Right, clickbait and things of that nature. Those are things that on the YouTube platform um, can be a make or break for a YouTube channel. But I would also say that this channel has grown quickly, effectively, and has a very strong base with people like LL8 or like L8, um, Luis Rosario, Quentin White responds a lot. D'Lo Florida responds a lot. There's a handful of different people who tend to be in my comment section very consistently, and that's because we're slowly but surely building a very strong community here on Magic Latest. Whether it takes a long time or I blow up in the next 2 to 3 months, that's fine. At the end of the day, this is all about me trying to build a community. I'm not really worried about how quickly or how slowly that gets done. But I appreciate it. Michael Gel B says they'll make the playoffs, but play-in would be a disappointment. Mike Malone. Mike Malone's an interesting name as far as coaching. We're gonna do a deeper run into the coaching conversation very, very soon. I'm actually gonna do some research on the background of a handful of different coaching candidates that you guys give me over the course of the next couple of weeks. And if a coaching change is not made in the month of February, we're actually going to kick off March with a little March Madness conversation of things the Orlando Magic, need to address. But that's obviously for later on. As far as making the play-in, they would be in the play-in right now. They would be in the play-in right now. Just throwing that out there. Luis Rosario, shout out to you as always, as I just mentioned before, and said there's nothing wrong with being number 2 on the team. Scottie Pippen, Tim Duncan, among others. So Franz will be just fine being a number 2 in the Magic. Who was Tim Duncan a number 2 to? Tony Parker? Questionable decision making there, brother. But I understand what you're trying to say. There is nothing wrong with being a number 2 at all. L Bless says, or I Bless says, how could anyone mention Wendell Carter Jr. as a solid rebounder? He don't jump or clear out in the paint. He don't stand his ground or command respect. He's slow to react. He does move his feet and guard well on the wing. With that said, he does not stop anyone. He maintains them for a little, which looks on switch plays. The point in his defense is okay to maintain a player, not to stop. He don't jump for boards or time them properly. He lets them come to him. He's also slow to react. Mo Bamba puts more pressure on opponents in the paint, where you could see the looks on opponent's face when they see him. Window is better switching than the one. Fear him. So okay. 3 things. Number 1, Wendell Carter Jr. is considered a solid rebounder because he averages 6. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, let me double check this to make sure I'm understood. He averages, yes, 7.5 rebounds. He is the team's leading rebounder behind Paulo Banchero, who averages 8.7, excuse me. And he is somebody who's top 40 in rebounds per game. That's a solid rebounder. Number 2, his ability to guard in space is what makes up for his inability to protect the rim. Now, as a player who plays the center position, do I care about how well you guard the perimeter and how well you guard in space if you cannot protect the rim? No. And that's the biggest issue with Wendell Carter Jr. is that the thing that he does that makes him special as a big does not circumvent the fact that the thing he struggles with devalues him as a big. His ability to guard in space is very much respected, especially for being a center. That was one of the things that once upon a time plagued Rudy Gobert because he was viewed as a DPOY candidate, despite the fact that he couldn't do anything more than protect the paint because he didn't move his feet well on the perimeter guarding against smaller players. Wendell Carter Jr. does actually play very well against smaller guards. The issue is he's a bad rim protector. When you're a center, rim protection is your number 1 job. The ability to guard in space is probably somewhere between 2 and 4. That is the issue with Wendell Carter Jr. You bringing up Jonathan Isaac, I bless you. You pay attention to this podcast too much to know that there's not a world where Jonathan Isaac is better than Wendell Carter Jr. You listen to this podcast too much to know that Jonathan Isaac is nowhere close to where Wendell Carter Jr. is. And if Jonathan Isaac wants to prove me wrong, play more than 4 minutes. Quentin White says, sure, we are a playoff team, but I don't want to just make the playoffs. I want to win. We all do. This just doesn't look like the year for it. Luis Rosario was very active in the comment section, actually, so we'll probably end up reading a good handful of his today. I'm sitting on 8, but leaning towards 10 because we can't find any kind of rhythm in winning several games in a row. All this talent, and we could be in the lottery without a pick. No bueno. And that's the problem. We could be a lottery team without a lottery pick. Mind you, Cedric Coward is hooping for Memphis, by the way. Cedric Coward is hooping for Memphis. And as of right now, I'm going to do something I've never done on the podcast before because I didn't think we'd have to worry about it this season. But ladies and gentlemen, let's go to the 2026 Tankathon Simulator. If the season were to end today, the Memphis Grizzlies would have the 15th overall pick via the Orlando Magic as well as the 8th pick in the NBA draft. If I sim the lottery one time, they're 9th, they're 10th. This one has them as high as 4. It feels as though maybe I'm tripping as far as if there are any protections because it doesn't look like the Memphis pick is moving at all. Or maybe that's just strictly based off of the standings, right? Neither here nor there. There's a chance that this Memphis Grizzlies team could have 2 top 15 picks in a deep NBA draft class for 2026. Coming off of 2 years with getting Jalen Wells the year before and Cedric Coward this year. Also, the year before, they also got Zach Edey, who, when healthy, has actually been pretty solid for them as well. The Orlando Magic might mess around and help rebuild the Memphis Grizzlies for them. And they might not even have to give up John Morant or Jaren Jackson Jr. in order to do whatever rebuild it is they're trying to do. Absolutely atrocious. He also says, this team is killing me slowly with my patience. I'm going to the Miami game for just 24 hours. It's going to cost me $1,000. So where is my return on my emotional investment in this team if we keep losing? I have been a Magic fan since 1989, and I'm never going to quit being a fan, but I need some reason to continue cheering on this team. Shout out to you for going to the game. Shout out to you for spending the money. Hopefully they give you the return on investment by being a crosstown rival and making the most of that trip for you. And yeah, this Magic team, I mean, they're free falling quickly. They do need to do something to turn things around. Hector Rivera says panic mode is level 10. Can't even blame you. Again, if you're talking about the worry level being 10 says they might miss the play. There's a high chance they miss the playoffs. If the season ended today, they would be in the play-in tournament and having to play 2 games. Or, excuse me, where they are right now, they would have to play a game in order to secure their spot in the playoffs. And they are a game away. They are one more loss away from being in a spot in the play-in tournament where they would have to win 2 games in order to just simply be the 8th seed. So having a panic meter of 10 is fair. And that's why I asked the question when I asked it, was because I knew that second Cleveland Cavaliers game would have significant implications on the standings, especially if the Magic lost. Didn't think they would lose, but knew that if they did lose, it would cost them significantly in the standings. They were once upon a time 5th, as high as even 4th in the Eastern Conference standings. They are currently 8th. Luis Rosario also says it's time for the front office to get aggressive about the need for a few new players that can score more points and a head coach that can elevate this team to the next level because 4 years of the same is enough. I said at the top of the podcast, I'm going to continue with this way. This Magic team needs to look different in some capacity on February 6th. On February 5th, decisions need to be made. On February 6th, this team needs to look different than what they were before, than what they are currently. D-Lo Florida says, yeah, I hate to admit it, but Mose might have reached his peak as the head coach. Time to move on. Understandable. Parker Swiss says we need a new head coach. Bring back Penny. Not necessarily sure if Penny is the guy. We haven't seen Penny win necessarily on a high level. We also don't have a great representation of Penny as a developmental coach. We've seen him as a head coach with Memphis before. And, I mean, so-so on the developmental standpoint. I mean, the production he's had under him from an NBA perspective is what, like Boogie Ellis, Lester Quinones. I mean, obviously James Wiseman, but he didn't even, like, play. So, I mean, that doesn't really count. So that's a little bit tricky. Dutch Entertainment, as a Magic fan from Maryland, I'm going out of my way to watch this team. Dutch Entertainment, as a fan of the Magic that is also located in Maryland, if you're going out of your way to watch this team, how hard do you think it is to be a guy that covers this team? Man, it is difficult. It is difficult, especially in a year like this one. Quentin White says panic meter is at a 2 for making the playoffs. They are still going to make the playoffs despite the issues. Coaching options are Mike Malone, and a very interesting name I'm seeing and like the idea of is Chris Quinn, grabbing somebody from a Heat culture. Pocket that. Because Chris Quinn is also a name that I've seen as well that I think would be an interesting fit, especially given what he has been for that team in terms of their changes offensively over the last 2 to 3 years. This season was the most dynamic change as far as some of the things that they've been doing, but that's a good name to keep in mind. James Estrella says, Jalon, could we come up with a trade package to get Russell Westbrook and Zach LaVine in any way? Okay. Very simple. Very simple. It would require, and I'm gonna let me make sure I want to pull up Russell Westbrook's contract specifically, because I know that Zach LaVine is at about $35 million. I'm gonna double check that as well, but we're gonna do this together on the podcast. Let's make something very clear. Russell Westbrook is at $2.2 million and is an expiring contract. So Russell Westbrook is the throw-in as far as we're concerned as the Orlando Magic for any Sacramento Kings trade, right? Because if I'm not mistaken, let me make sure. All right, perfect. Stop switching that over. Zach LaVine is lowballed him. $47 million with a $48.9 million player option next season. So, let's round it up. Let's say the combination that we need to get to as the Orlando Magic is $51 million. That is what we need to aggregate in order for the Orlando Magic to land Russell Westbrook and Zach LaVine. Okay? So, if we needed to aggregate that in a way that would make the most sense, the easiest names to get there would be Jalen Suggs at $35 million, Jonathan Isaac at $15 million. That would put us at $50 million off the rip. And then you would trade one of either Jet Howard, Tristan Da Silva, or Jace Richardson, preferably either of Jet Howard or Tristan Da Silva, in exchange for Zach LaVine and Russell Westbrook. That is what would work. Essentially, the benefits for the Sacramento Kings in a trade like that one would be that Jalen Suggs is a young guard under contract long term. Jonathan Isaac has non-guarantees in his contract over the next 4 seasons, in which he is under contract, but he has non-guarantees that make his contract a little less lucrative long term for them, while also being somebody that maybe they trust to play more than 10 minutes a game for. And then the sweetener in any shape or form would be a young player in either Jet Howard, who, yes, they would have to pay, but would be a foundational piece, similar to Jace Richardson, who actually would not have to get paid and would already be under a team-friendly contract as somebody drafted in the 20s and currently only owed a little under $3 million per year. Very simple. Very simple. It actually is not that complicated to get to a good trade, especially with the Sacramento Kings. And especially in a trade like that one where they're getting 2 young players, and specifically if it's Jet Howard would be somebody that comes off their books, or they could re-sign for a favorable deal given the fact that he isn't this super proven commodity, so you don't have to worry about like a rookie max extension for him. You probably can get Jet Howard for about $7 to $8 million per year as like a flyer mile pickup player, along with Jalen Suggs, who's already, again, on a lucrative deal, but is signed for the next 2 to 3 seasons. And then, again, Jonathan Isaac has non-guarantees, which makes him an interesting player who they can either reflip or at any time reflip as a salary dump, or at any time just kind of like waste away until, they see so little value in his contract that they can maybe just release him for nothing. Does that work, James Estrada? Does that trade sound any good to you? Does that trade sound any good to you guys? You guys let me know in the comment section down below. Magic Hero says, great episode. Feels like you were preaching, in my opinion. Trade P5 for Michael Porter Jr. Franz, healthy, driving better to the basket. It's a better defender and a better free throw shooter. Michael Porter Jr. for P5. Brother, do not let one season get you messed up. Don't let one season get you messed up. Because Michael Porter Jr. has been unnaturally healthy this season. Don't forget that. He's been unnaturally healthy. If the Brooklyn Nets get Paolo Banchero out of Michael Porter Jr., that will be one of the greatest sell-high trade acquisitions we've ever seen in the NBA. A half a season of Michael Porter Jr. as healthy as he is, playing at an all-star level, and he is, landing Paolo Banchero, who, mind you, would have all 5 years of his rookie max extension available because he doesn't start that until next season. So the Brooklyn Nets would have all 5 years of Paolo Banchero's rookie max extension, and a player who's already made an all-star game in Paolo, over Michael Porter Jr., who may barely make it or be snubbed outside of the all-star game this year, for a half a season level of production that we've never seen from him prior. That's a dangerous trade. That's a dangerous trade. That's all I'll say. AL610 says Tyler Jenkins, Mike Malone, Tom Thibodeau, and a long shot I would not mind some Heat culture and Chris Quinn. Again, table that name. We are gonna I've put together a little like notes list in my phone of guys that have been mentioned, or that I think that would be interesting, or that the comment section mentions to me. Tyler Jenkins, Mike Malone, Tom Thibodeau, and Chris Quinn are all on that list. We will probably finish with a list of at least 7 to 10 guys when we do that podcast, by the way. A1 Dawn the Truth says Mosley not the one for this job. D-Lo Florida says, yes, I think we will make the playoffs, but if what Banchero said is true, they will not make it out of the first round, and I don't think they will have home court advantage at this point. Michael Malone or Steve Nash are picks for a new coach. Steve Nash is on the list as well. James Estrella also says, Jalen, you hit nails hard on every point. I hope the Magic organization see this video. They need to wake up and see what fans want and could make sense of. Jalen, you dropped bombs on this episode. Facts. Thank you, Jalen, by giving Jace the keys. To respond to all of that, thank you again in advance, James, for all of your support under the podcast. It's a really big help. It's really, useful in terms of just, again, continuing to create content that you guys value. And I'm glad that, I'm speaking to the Orlando Magic audience. I want to make it very clear. I've said this before, but I think people don't, for people that are not familiar with the podcast, people that are new to the podcast or that may have missed the episodes where I've discussed this, I am a Chicago Bulls fan. I'm a Chicago Bulls fan first, an Orlando Magic fan second, and a lot of the reason why I'm an Orlando Magic fan and didn't mind covering the Orlando Magic as part of Fan Arch is because I've always made the joke that I'm a pseudo Magic fan due to the fact that the Chicago Bulls have helped build a lot of where the Orlando Magic are, right? The Chicago Bulls are part of the reason that they were able to land Franz Wagner in that draft. The Chicago Bulls are the reason why the Orlando Magic have Wendell Carter Jr. The Chicago Bulls are part of the reason why they don't have to deal with the Nikola Vucevic contract, right? Unironically, they've also had a few Bulls players like Gary Harris, for example, right? Like, the Orlando Magic have always been subsequently associated with Chicago Bulls in a lot of different formats. So all of that to say that this is a team that I follow for quite some time, but my favorite team, of course, is the Chicago Bulls, as I've mentioned on past podcasts. But that's why I take so much pride in what you guys say and give me as feedback as far as the Orlando Magic fan base, because although I've tried my best to capture what I believe is the pulse of the Orlando Magic fan base, I cannot actually fully get the grasp and understand it to its full capacity without you guys' help. That's why it's so important. That's why it's so valuable, because although I am a fan of the Orlando Magic, I am not in these trenches. I have not been a fan as long as, for example, my boy Luis Rosario talking about how he's been a fan since 1989 and does not fail to remind me on multiple episodes, which I think is so helpful, by the way. I'm not saying that to say that it's annoying. I'm saying that to say that that's important, that I grab the attention and grab the feelings and emotions and perspective of a fan like that who's been a fan of this team for over 30 years, right? Fans of this team that have been following this team for the better part of the 2000s, the 2010s, into now, right? It's important for me to grasp that, because you can't build a fan base around a podcast that focuses primarily on one team without having a full understanding of the pulse of that fan base. Doesn't matter who I'm a fan of. How do you guys feel about the team that I cover 5 days a week? That's what matters to me. Truthfully, that matters to me more than anything, because I can say whatever I want as far as reading the box score or finding some of Paolo Banchero's quotes or reading off Jamal Mosley's take after a game, reading off injury reports before a matchup. I can do all of those things, and it would be good content in the framework of making sure that everybody knows the ins and outs of what's going on with the Orlando Magic on the floor. But I wouldn't be any different from any other Orlando Magic podcast if I can just read up off of stuff that we all have seen already online. Right? The way that we look different, the way that Magic latest podcast is different, is by involving you guys and your emotions, your takes, your feelings in the podcast as much as humanly possible. It's the reason why those mailbag episodes, I don't do them as often, truthfully, because I go to the comment section as part of building topics out pretty much every single day. If you guys notice, I use the comment section as a segment of my 4 segments every episode, just about anywhere between 3 to 4 of the 5 episodes per week. And it's because you guys' opinions matter so much as far as my takes on the Orlando Magic, my feelings about their directions moving forward, as well as my feelings on the play that they have on the floor on a night-to-night basis. So thank you again, James Estrella, and thank you to all of you who have, shared positive words about the podcast and my takes and so on and so forth over the course of the last couple of months, because that is what keeps this podcast going. Not my ability to put this microphone in front of me, although this is the starting point to it. But you guys and you guys' support is the part of the reason this Magic podcast can keep going. Last but not least, Landrock says, kudos to you. Great breakdown. Coach Mose deserves all the credit in the world for the rebuild, but it's time to make a change. Thank you again, Lando Rock. And yeah, I'm not going to lie. Coach Mose is definitely in a spot right now where he looks like the bridge coach. The Magic have to make the decision on whether or not they're ready to finally cross that bridge and leave him behind. Unfortunate, but it just may be time. With all that being said, this has been another edition of the Magic Ladies Podcast. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit that post notification bell so you always know when we're dropping new videos. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Hit the QR code in the right-hand corner or the link in the description. Shout out to Underdog as usual. Promo code BASKETBALLFAN for $75 in bonus entries when you place your first $5 bet. With that all being said, this has been another edition of the Magic Ladies Podcast. Like I said, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.